Hello everyone, it's me Justina. Welcome back, or welcome to Investigative Sophism. And let me dive into today's topic by asking you a very simple question. What does courage look like for you? When we think of courage, being brave, bravery in general, what does it really mean? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. It stems from a rather anecdotal situation where an acquaintance of mine was telling me a story where something happened, was some threat involved, where one of the people said this sentence, which to me sounds something, I have to say, from a movie. Like, why would you say that sentence? Why would you ask that question? But the question was, oh, are you calling me a coward? And I think there are many ways to deconstruct that, and I will go into one of them a little bit later in this episode. I think one of them is probably just some toxic masculinity situation there, but it made me think really about courage and how we define it for ourselves, and also another thing that I will mention very briefly, how we can deconstruct that question in a more profound way. So why to ask this question? I think most of us probably, we would like to think that we're living our lives with some courage, I guess, or we admire people who do that, right? So depending on how to define courage and bravery, we probably say, oh my goodness, this person is so brave, so courageous, and we say it, meaning that, there's something positive there. And I want to invite you today to reflect on how you define courage for yourself. Is it communicating clearly when it's tough? Is it maybe setting healthy boundaries? It's also kind of tough, right? Is it maybe challenging yourself a bit more physically? Is it taking certain risks at work? Like, what is it in your life? Like, how you see it, how you define it. And if there are people, your friends, maybe once again, people you admire, say, oh, this was so brave, this is so courageous. What is that exactly? And we know that human behavioral research and psychology tells us that the precursor to courage is very often or always vulnerability, right? It's not brave to do something if you're kind of not exposing yourself. Like, this is where the bravery comes from. So that's one of the frames how we can sort of deconstruct what usually courage means. But I think there's so many formats of that courage, right? Like, so many formats it can take. So what is it in your life? For me, I have to say, I often get this comment and I'm like, I don't think this is like fair, let's say. When I tell people, I've lived in different places, I've kind of moved around for the past, I guess, like 15 years, just going from one continent really to another, and I'm kind of continuing. I'm filming this from Colombia right now, and I would flip my camera. I have this amazing view here. It's very beautiful. Anyway, so my living abroad, continues, and some people have told me like, oh, like that's very brave, and I would say, I guess, I do have a pretty high tolerance for uncertainty, and that has helped me a lot in life. But I would keep brave for, maybe like doctors in war zones and investigative journalists, fighting corruption. But that's one of the ways how I would define courage for myself and how I wouldn't. But at the same time, I think during my lifetime, also my lifespan, my definition of courage has expanded a lot. And I think we start maybe appreciating people taking certain actions that maybe when we're younger, we're like, oh yeah, of course, that's like a small deal. And then later in life, we realize, no, actually, that's a very big deal. A tough conversation can be a very big deal. It can be scary. And it takes a lot of vulnerability to do it well, right? So what is courage for you? What are the kind of like deconstructed traits in other people that you find that, okay, this is an example of, living bravely? And can we bring a bit more of that into our lives, right? If we say that this is something we admire, we probably want a bit more of that in our lives. That's a very simple assumption. So for me, it would be, maybe challenging myself physically in some respects. Maybe, starting something new where I'm, I don't have any credentials and I'm building something, right? Which is, for me, that's brave. For me, that's very scary. So what is it for you, and how can you have a bit more of that in your life? Maybe it's integrity for you, living according to your values, speaking out, standing up for yourself and others, right? What's that image in a way of a person, of yourself, that you would like to be? And if we sort of deconstruct the pathway to there, what are these things? What are these steps? What are these qualities and small actions we can take to get there? So it's still, I guess it's just called building character in a way. But I think even if it's a known concept, it's good to reflect on a thing as simple as courage and what it means to be brave, because it's easy not to think about it. And then it's easy to maybe look back at your life and say, oh, I wish I was braver in certain respects. Braver in meaningful ways, right? Not every pursuit of whatever is, brave. It only depends on how you define it for yourself. So that's one big thing I wanted to tell you and to sort of invite you to do, right? To reflect a bit. I'm like, okay, if I were to see myself as a brave person, what would that mean? What would that look like? What could I do to kind of show myself that I'm on that path? So that's one thing. Another thing I want to do is to deconstruct that really weird question of, oh, are you calling me a coward? That was told to me recently. And this doesn't necessarily relate to bravery, but I thought it was a good opportunity to go into this very simple concept of, okay, if something that's told to you provokes a strong reaction, right? Maybe you go into defense, maybe you go into offense. Why? And of course, if we're, we can think that if I'm secure in myself, if I think I'm, let's say, brave, whatever, however I define it, I'm smart, I'm kind, I'm, I don't know, I'm a good person, I'm, curious, whatever. If I'm secure in that thinking, if that self-image, if in that knowing maybe, then no simple question's gonna shake that up for me. So I'm not gonna react to it because I don't believe that it's true. And if to some insult, something that you take as an insult, you respond in a stronger way, I think it's such a good opportunity to ask, why am I suddenly responding to this thing, right? For me, for example, someone calls me a coward in a certain way, certain respect, I'd be like, oh yeah, like I know where I'm brave in life and I know where I'm not brave also. And like, this is maybe where my worth lies. If I want to be the more real, the more authentic me. So for me, if someone says something that's not true, then it's like, well, I know it's not true, so why should I react? And if someone says something that's true, then it is true, and then I agree probably. So that's in my head. It's like, oh, a very simple, possibility tree there, just a couple of options, like that's it. So I also invite you to notice to what comments, to what descriptors maybe you react a bit more strongly, because this is where our work lies, I think, in a way, right? We show ourselves where that work is. And I've talked about it in my previous episodes as well, but I think it's always good to kind of reiterate that, because I think it's so important, because those opportunities of learning, of that inner discovery, every day we have them, right? And I thought that was just another one stemming from that very dramatic kind of question. And I want to leave you with something that I really, really like. I think I've been writing about it, and I always insert in my articles and my recordings. And it's a quote by the Italian author, maybe you've heard of him, Umberto Eco. He was quite famous in some circles. And in his book, Foucault's Pendulum, the main character, like, the book is not about that per se, but I really, really like that passage. And for me, it was just so memorable. When I think of courage, I very, very often think of this. And so the main character, he reflects on his own, self-image and on the concept, I guess, of courage. And he says that because he's living in a decade where there's no resistance, right? I believe it's like 80s or 90s where the book is set. So there's no resistance that he could join. So he wasn't born early enough to maybe have joined the resistance to the fascism, right, that was there in Italy. So he was saying, because I never lived in those times and I never had a chance to join resistance, I never had a chance to prove that I'm not a coward, I think of myself as of a coward because I never had a chance to prove to myself otherwise. And I thought it was such a brilliant passage because I think there's so many ways, right? And obviously when we look back at history, we can think, well, if I actually, have been in this specific situation, like, would I have been actually in that situation? Would I have joined resistance or not? Of course, there are many resistance movements we can join now. The world is not still a very nice place. So there are movements we can join, literal movements we can. But are there any maybe opportunities that appear, meaningful opportunities that we don't take? And because we don't take them, that kind of affects our self-image. It's not that we should be looking for some weird, aggressive opportunities to show, that, oh, I'm so brave in this respect. But we have to be careful, I think, about what those missed opportunities can do to our self-image. And I would like to think that everyone is just like that character in the book. But when I reflect on my own life, right, those missed opportunities of courage, very often of kindness, speaking out for others, it's not that they have a toll, but they might have an effect. So for me, it's important not to miss them, or at least not all of them, right? Because obviously they're always around us. So, what does courage mean to you? How do you define it in the people you admire, your friends? What are the qualities you would like to have more of, and how do we get there? I think these are very beautiful questions, and these are the questions we have to ask if we, it sounds very cheesy, but if we want to lead the lives that we really want to lead. If I want to be the person who I claim I am, if I want to be the person who I think I am, sometimes I really have to reflect and I have to be very conscious, because that the ideal is, there's some conscious action between how I am and the ideal. And the ideal obviously has to be based, I think, very much on kindness and self-compassion, and not some, externally imposed, unrealistic ideals of people in the first place. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this sparked some reflections in you, some discoveries perhaps that create value in your life. I hope this was useful, and I hope to see you soon in my upcoming episode. So thank you so much. Bye-bye for now.